I've always admired the wonderful music education system that ignites from Scandinavian countries. Music is by no means a soft subject there. Many great and groundbreaking Scandinavian musicians of varied musical styles have and continue to grace the world with their incredible musicianship. Well, my guest today is recognised as one of Norway's great classical musicians, the trumpeter Tine Helseth. Well, what a wonderful name is that. And I'm interested to know more about Tine's journey in carving out a career as one of the few female trumpet soloists and what drives her to push her creative boundaries. Well, first of all, thank you very much for taking part in this podcast. And it's really nice to meet you because I don't think we've met in person before, have we?
No, I don't think we have. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
No,
it's great.
no
Yes.
problem at all. And you're based now in lovely Oslo.
Oslo, yes. It's my hometown, so it's where I'm born and everything. So
Absolutely. And can you just perhaps start by describing your musical landscape growing up?
well, in Norway we have a very strong wind band, brass band tradition. So that's basically what I did. I mean, I grew up in well, not a classical music home. More like my parents played in their local band as a hobby. I grew up thinking everyone played in wind bands, playing an instrument. So yeah, it started as a hobby, and it was very natural for me to start playing quite young. I was 6 when I started playing.
Wow.
And since my mom, 6 years old, and since my mom plays the trumpet, then I wanted to do that. Yeah. So but I'm the first professional musician in the family, and I mean, in wind bands we play everything, like everything from marches and stuff, to more classical things, to pop and jazz and rock, and it's like a mixed. And I was the biggest Spice Girl fan. So it's it's very eclectic, my musical upbringing.
Well, that's interesting that you should say that, because of course there's just been such an extraordinary myriad of musicians who have come from Norway and indeed all of the Scandinavian countries. And I will say I have had the good fortune of performing with one of Norway's best wind ensembles, and honestly gosh, how can I put it? They're just so incredibly versatile. Really
Absolutely.
versatile musicians.
Yeah, that's part of their job, kind of. We have I think it's 5 professional military bands, then we have 1 non-military but still professional. My husband actually plays in one of them. And it's really, I think it's quite unique, but it shows off so it's because of those that we also, or not just because of those, but it goes both ways. So because of the very strong like hobby amateur world that came out of the military bands in the old days, and then the amateur kind of whole movement of playing in wind bands and brass bands started. And then now, of course, because of this, then the level of wind players and percussion and being educated at the universities and stuff like that are really high. So then now the level of those players in the bands are very high.
Absolutely. And we can almost relate to what you're saying, because here in the UK as well, there's been such a great history of amateur music making, and a lot of the brass playing, wind playing, choral work and all sorts of things, folk music and so on, has come from the amateur scene, and it's absolutely fantastic, and we want to hang on to that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the best thing of all. They just play because they want to.
Exactly right. And I'm intrigued that when you saw your mum play the trumpet, was it because, well, that's your mum playing the trumpet, or was there something specific about the instrument itself that resonated with you?
Well, I'm not sure actually, because I have like photos of myself as a I don't know, some months old, having a trumpet next to me, kind of, and several photos from when I'm like 2-3 years old, playing around with a cornet. So I guess it's kind of, I think that the instrument really spoke to me somehow, because I did start playing the piano when I was 5, but it wasn't for me. I wished I'd stayed on a bit longer so that I could actually play the piano a little bit now. But unfortunately, it was very boring compared to playing the trumpet. So I thought.
Yes, well, it's never.
I guess to a certain degree, I think it spoke to me somehow.
Yes, and I mean,
so.
You obviously had your mum playing, and you started playing. And were there a lot of female trumpet players within the wind bands in Norway at the time?
It was. I mean, I had no idea that it was rare, because when I grew up, there was just as many girls as boys in the band. They played trombone and tuba and trumpet and horn and flute and clarinet and like everything, and percussion and everything. It was just, maybe it was more like a little bit more normal that they wanted to play the flute or the clarinet, but then not, kind of, there was just as many. All genders were just like mixed. So I didn't know that it was strange until I started like become a bit older, starting kind of seeing the world a bit, traveling, and then I was like, oh, this is actually it's not like that everywhere.
And I can relate to that as a percussion player, because possibly similar to you, there were a lot of young girls playing percussion, at school. I think there's only one boy playing percussion, can you believe?
Yeah.
But then it completely flipped when I became a full-time student, and I was the only girl. But then, as you say, once you start traveling around, you begin to see how it is, globally and in different territories. But of course, as you progressed through music college and so on, I mean, was there a definitive moment whereby you thought, you know what, I want to be a soloist?
It's very strange, because I always wanted to do that. I can't remember wanting to do anything else. So probably from when I was like 10, 11 years old, when I knew that it was a thing, when I kind of realized, oh, people can do this as a living. I want to do that. So it's very strange, a bit naive, I guess, but it's just like, I had this feeling that this is my path somehow. So I just, I played, so I was ambitious, but I have it, like, my feeling is that I also met a lot of the right people along the way. I had an amazing teacher that really nurtured the sides of my musicianships that maybe were not something that every trumpet player had. Kind of, he saw that this is something that is special about me, and he did that in a great way. That I kind of, I practiced a lot. I was very like, not now I'm more like woo all over the place. But when I studied, I was very like structured and everything. And then, but I mean, I started traveling when I was like 18, so which is a while ago now. So it's very, it was just how it is, kind of. It was what it just kind of happens.
And it's so interesting what you're saying, because in a way it's hard sometimes to describe what it is. As you say, it's like a gut feeling. It's just something within yourself that that is the path that you want to follow. And when you say that you were incredibly organized and rigorous with your practice, and interesting that you had someone actually look at the science and look at you, i.e. your kind of engine that you had to work with in connection with the trumpet. And now you said, oh, you're a bit kind of with bits and pieces. What do you think has changed there? Is it just the nature that sometimes travel, ignites, and that, well, you never quite know what's really going to happen, even although things are organized, but you've just got to go with the flow, and it disrupts your practice schedule and all sorts of things? Is it just life in general?
It's a bit of all. I think. I think so. When I started, when I was really like, okay, I'm going to do this, and when I was in this environment with other students, I went to quite a small school, a private university here in Oslo. It was a great trumpet class. I was the youngest, but for a long time. But then also I went to this class together with string players and pianists, and I was the only wind player in that small group. So it was I mean, they practice a lot. So many hours. I can't do that. I mean, physically it was not for me, but I saw that kind of how they worked, which was different from what I came from. I mean, I came from practicing, but it's a different mindset. And then I kind of combined the two, and I think I had just this, I needed to have the knowledge and the craft, I needed to learn everything as good as I could. Like to be able to, I see that now very clearly in retrospect. I mean, to be able to suddenly being like thrown into this world when you're 18, 19, doing soloist stuff with orchestras, traveling, to be able to kind of handle that pressure. You really need to like feel like you're so prepared. You to handle it, kind of to feel like this is something that I can do, because I have to play well. There was no other option. I mean, this is just, that's just how it is. And you're being compared to the grown-ups, even though you feel like a baby compared to them, and it's just this scary but incredibly exciting world. It's kind of whirlwind thing that starts. So I think to be able to kind of do that in the beginning, I needed the structure. I needed the this thing that I could, like, okay, I know what I'm doing. But then I think over the years, I'm turning 34 this year. Over the years, you get I have experience now, kind of, life happens, things happens, I mean, other parts of your life, and I don't know, it's not that I take it just as seriously, of course, but I have more, I trust my skills a bit more. I want to be more freer, I guess, somehow in my musicianship. Me as a musician, I don't know, I like well, to be honest, I like being over 30. I like the experience I have. I like the experiences I've had. But everything's my God, it's a completely different world than it was when I started. So I think it's just a bit of that. So I take it as seriously, but at the same time, I've done the hard work at some point. So I don't have to do that every day anymore.
It's fascinating, really, because a question that I'm sure we're all asked as musicians is, what's the best way to practice? How much time do you spend practicing a day, and so on? And as you say, so eloquently, that journey changes all of the time, and it
absolutely
that whole process needs listening to, depending on where you're at the time, and so it's fascinating to hear that from you. And I mean, have you ever longed to play in an orchestra in the brass section?
No, No.
No.
It's just I mean, I did it a bit when I studied and stuff, and of course, I mean, for my wind band days, you know, playing an ensemble. I love playing an ensemble, but no, it's a completely different kind of job than my job. So, for instance, you know, even though my husband, he also plays the trumpet, so we play the same instrument, but it's, you know, it's completely different. We have completely different jobs, so we do the same, but we don't do the same.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would be terrified if I was supposed to play, you know, the opening of Mahler 5 or something. I mean, I was, oh my God, I would be like nervous. You know, it's yeah. But being in front, that's fine. I mean, I am nervous, of course, but I mean that I know.
Isn't that
So
funny? You know,
it's just a different way of thinking. Yeah.
And I mean, the trumpet is such an unforgiving instrument, actually.
Oh, yes.
And talking about nerves, I mean, how do you prepare and acknowledge nerves, handle that situation, or do you take the moment as it is?
I think from a very early age, I didn't have huge problems with nerves. So I got nervous, but I always it was always okay, kind of. It didn't overtake. It didn't make me not have a good performance, kind of. So I think I was quite lucky, and maybe then again, that's how I work as a human being, kind of, you know, my mind, that's how it worked then. And then in the beginning of my professional career, I was very nervous, but I remember it was one incident. I was maybe, I don't know, 19, 20 something, playing in Lucerne at the KKL, this amazing hall there. And I remember, I mean, I felt very sick, like that kind of nervous, you know, that people feel like. And then while the orchestra played the overture, I threw up.
Oh, goodness.
And I remember this very clearly. I was like, I looked myself in the mirror and I said, "This is unacceptable. This is not how it's going to be, because this is going to be, you know, your life now. There is no way that this is gonna happen before every concert. No. And I've never done it again."
Oh, how
So I do
interesting.
think, and I still felt sick for a while, but it never happened again. And now I don't really do that in that same way. But I tell this to students and stuff, to be like, because I do think we have so much more control than we think. Of course, it's individual, but I felt like I decided there and then that this is not how it's going to be. Because I do a lot of colleagues that, you know, that really struggles with these things. So yeah, that was something that I decided. And then it's the whole thing of you know, playing a wind instrument. It's the whole breathing kind of thing that is easily affected. But it's also nice because I have to breathe properly, so that also makes the nerves go away, if that makes sense.
It does indeed.
Because, yeah, a lot of other instrumentalists, that not wind instrumentalists, kind of feel like your breathing is going out of control, but I can't. It has to be. I have to be in control somehow. And I'm also, from very early on, I can be very nervous, especially if there's something, you know, really hard that I'm gonna play. If it's a huge thing, you know, like something that makes it a bit extra special. But I leave my nerves behind the stage door. So when I go on stage, then I'm not nervous anymore.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, I suppose being able to talk about the subject goes a long way.
Absolutely.
It really does, and it's fascinating how you just had that very straight down the line inner chat with yourself, and just said,
Yeah.
this is unacceptable and something has to change.
Yeah.
And that's quite powerful, really. And it's funny about breathing, because of course with percussion players, myself included, is that sometimes you do forget to breathe. But I
Yes.
think what happens is that because all of the body is lined up to play something, that in a way the breathing then takes care of itself, because
Yeah.
of the physical energy. And watching you perform, it's like a piece of art in a way, because I get the feeling that you play as though you're playing an oboe or a clarinet, how you move, that it really is so beautiful to look at, and it feels so effortless. It's really quite something.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, thank you. It's a lot of people say this, oh, it looks like, it looks so easy. Which I think that I it should somehow. I like that it's like that, because then it shouldn't look like you're dying, even though something is hard. If you have to use, a lot of power, a lot of air, and I don't want to get like red in the face and stuff. I think I want people to only think of the music, not the kind of sport element about it, you know what I mean, like the athlete kind of thing. I think it's nice to just, but it doesn't feel it doesn't feel effortless all the time, trust me. But I have seen performances when if it's recorded on something, then I see it afterwards and I'm like, oh my god, I was really working out, and it looks like it's just easy peasy. But
But
yeah.
isn't this a Scandinavian thing where, it's often very understated? This is a Scandinavian trait where you don't get too excited about things, and everything is under control, and
Yeah, well, it might look like that from the outside, but it's trust me, it's not the case all the time. But yeah, it's I don't know. I think that's also one of the things that my teacher saw from when I was like 14, 15. Well, also my teacher before that, I've only had two teachers, but they saw that I had a very natural way of playing. So to really like just continue that and nurture it, and trying to really use only the power you need to use, basically physically, because that's the way to play. First of all, it's a very comfortable way to play, and it should be comfortable most of the time. That I tell the students as well. They might be a bit like you can say that, but it should be comfortable. I think our goal that it should be comfortable like 95% of the time. Then you have those 5% it will never be comfortable. It's like the extreme part of it. But it should feel natural to play, I think.
yeah.
And that is something that they saw in me, and then really like we worked on that. So I guess that's my relationship with my instrument, is like that, which makes me be able to play for a long time without getting that tired. Or if I get tired, it doesn't necessarily hear it as much. But it can feel like a struggle, but I don't think it should sound like a struggle if I can help it.
Absolutely, it's really quite lovely to
Yeah.
see you in action. It's almost as though you're bringing the technique to your body rather than forcing the body to the technique in a way, and that's quite
Well, that's a
special.
nice way of putting it. Yeah, that's actually a very nice way of putting it. That's exactly how it should be, I think.
And then, of course, you formed an all-female brass ensemble called Tine. And
Yes.
so what was the purpose of forming this group?
It was basically just a project that we did for fun. When was our first concert was on my 20th birthday. That was our first concert. It was basically me and the three other trumpet girls in the ensemble. We studied together. And yeah, it's one event that made this happen. We had this Christmas concert in school, and the string ensemble was playing some Vivaldi, Grieg or something. And we were like, oh, we also want to play that type of music. And then we just say, well, we can just start an ensemble then. And since we are only girls, why don't we just ask some of our fellow students that we know that are great players, and they're girls. So we did, but we only thought it would be like, we did the project that following summer, and we didn't know that it was going to be something we're still doing. So it's it started as that. Of course, we will never have a man in our ensemble now, because that's how it is. That's just how it is. We're very open about that. And yeah, no, it's just, we're good friends. We do, well, now it's been a long time since we did touring because of the situation. But yeah, a couple of tours a year. The other girls have their steady jobs in orchestras, ensembles, teaching. And then we get to do some tours every year, which is cool.
It's very cool. And you find that playing in the ensemble ignites aspects in your solo playing. You know, are there certain things that you notice, whether it is that teamwork that you can then draw from on, you know, as regards to your solo journey?
I think it's, for me, especially in the beginning, it was very important because I'm the leader, the dictator, as I sometimes call myself. No, the others get to also say something, and no, but I mean, I'm the leader. So and from the beginning, I loved the idea of trying to shape an ensemble and kind of growing into the part as being able to lead an ensemble, working on the sound, working on how all our 10 individual sound can get together, blend, finding a way of playing together that in the ensemble they played well. It's like we play each other. How do you say that in English? Like, some of them, they felt like they played better in tenting than they normally did. You know, like the way of having a trusting an environment where you know that we're great players and we're a great ensemble. That you just you grow kind of, and to create that energy that of course it's not only me, it's the other girls as well, but I mean I really felt it like a responsibility to have this ensemble that could do something unique, and being also very how do you say, there is a reason we're only girls, so we're not talking about it or not trying to it's not a political statement, that's not what it is, but it's just it is what it is, kind of. It's a way of showing young boys and girls around the world where we go, that, you know, you can do whatever you want. You can be a nurse even though you're a boy. You can play the tuba even though you're a girl. You can, you know, it's just that kind of thing, because there is very normal with an all male ensemble, not because it's just what it is, kind of. So then we had to do thought it would about time for an all-female band. And then of course we have to play well. I that's also something that I've felt as a female trumpet player, that sometimes I have the feeling that, or in the beginning, well, I had to play, it's a dangerous thing to say, but even better somehow than if I was a boy. A little bit. It's the feeling of just of you really have to just play at your best. Of course you have to do that anyway, but it's just I think it's a bit different for girls sometimes in the beginning in male dominated professions, but it's changing, and it's great to be a part of that. At the end of the day, it's all about you as a musician, and you have to do your thing, be true to yourself. It's all about the playing. So of course if we didn't play on the level that we do, it would be a joke. So it needs to be on top level, everything that I do and we do.
Absolutely. And I suppose that sometimes, when we are talking about instruments, we often say, well, that's more of a male-dominated instrument, like a tuba or a double bass, and flute might be more of a female instrument and so on. But actually, all instruments are capable of creating male and female sounds and everything
Absolutely.
in between. And perhaps changing the terminology that we use might help.
Yeah, absolutely. That we don't have to call it male and feminine kind of sides. And also, of course, when we travel, there is one, if we go into that area, there is one question that we always get, because there are many kids in the ensemble. I don't have any, but some of they have like 2-3 kids, I think it's like 14 kids altogether in the ensemble. And when we travel, and then when some of the other girls gets the question, so who looks after the kids when you're gone? Then of course, like all this, well, I'll tell you what, I have a father. No, but it's just, but then at the same time, it's kind of, it's great that we get to like, come on, it's like, this is not how it works, but it's nice then for other girls, or you get a question like, is it harder for you as a girl to play the trumpet than as a boy? And I was like, but it's good that I get to answer this. No, that's a very silly question, it's not true. For that, maybe some young girl somewhere sees it and it's like, oh yeah, that's true, yeah, maybe I want to play the trumpet. So there's a lot of really funny questions that my male colleagues will never get, but maybe they get some other questions that I will never get. So
it's fascinating, really. And of course, you've performed all over the world with all of our great orchestras, but also you've participated in some real key moments. I mean, one of them was at the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony. I mean, that must have been really quite special.
Absolutely. It was terrifying. But at the same time, luckily, I opened the whole thing. And this again was like, I was 20. I remember this very well. I was 20. It was in 2007. And I opened the whole thing with this fanfare that just written. I got it like a week before because it was just written. And luckily, it wasn't until afterwards, when I got off stage, that someone told me, well, there's like 300 million people watching. I'm like, oh my God, I'm happy you didn't tell me that beforehand. But it's truly special to be part of these different events in people's lives.
And then on a much darker note, in 2012, you opened the memorial concert for the Norwegian terror attacks, which happened in 2011. And you played from the roof of Oslo City Hall. I mean, that must have been a very extraordinary situation and emotionally quite harrowing.
Absolutely. It was even worse, or even like special, actually, the year before, just I was in Liverpool when it happened, recording actually. And so a couple of days after I got home, and then I went immediately to this kind of happening suddenly, this kind of memorial thing in Oslo, where I played. And there was like, I mean, there is 600,000, almost 600,000 people living in Oslo, and 300,000 were out in the streets with roses, because that's kind of like the Labour Youth Party, which was, you know, the youth camp that was attacked. They have a rose as their symbol. So everyone had roses, and it was just like, it was so packed in front of the city hall actually. And I played. It was just this absurd, very like out of. It felt surreal. It was like, what is this? And I played. And at the opening of the piece, it's a solo section, only me, and then all of this like crazy amount of people started lifting the rose up in the air, and then I just had to close my eyes, and I thought, this is not for me. This is not. I can't let this be emotional right now, because this is for all these people. This is, I can't be me, because I would, you know, afterwards I cried. Like it was this horrible emotional, but at the same time I felt then like, oh my God, what I do means something to someone, and right now it means a lot. So then being able also to play the year after was of course very special, but it was also special because at the actual concert, was live on TV. Suddenly at the actual concert, the wind was getting crazy, and I was up on the roof.
Yes.
It was very high up, and I'm scared of heights as well. So it was, but I was up, and then also I had to stand to for the cameras. I had to stand on this thing. So it really didn't feel like there was such a long way. Of course, there was a long way, but it didn't feel. And actually, the guy that was looking after me, he was kind of holding on to me. It was just on the, you know, it was the yeah, but it went okay. But it was this feeling of I was not in the moment in the same way, because I was just focused on not falling over. And also when I opened my mouth to breathe, then it was just like so much air. So it was like, yeah. But it was of course a very special occasion, and it's an honor to be asked to take part in these things that means so much in people's lives. So that yeah, and I think of course that's very special.
And the nature of the sound of the trumpet as well. There is just something that somehow connects people, whether it's the directness of the sound, but yet it can still be warm. The phrasing that a trumpet can produce, obviously the musician has to produce it, but it's really quite emotional, actually. There's something about the trumpet that really does connect people in so many different emotional contexts.
Yeah, I think there's, you know, the whole solo trumpet thing. I guess it's also because in the military and stuff, they use that, you know, for occasions to celebrate, but also in memoriam. They use it in the funerals, in the different, you know, they have the. So I think it's something about the trumpet that I think you're right, that this just it hits people differently than maybe another instrument. And also people, the normal man on the street, I think have a very different relationship to the trumpet than a violin, for instance. I think it's more of a, you know, it's jazz, it's all genres, but also it's I think it's sometimes a bit more accessible for. I mean, I don't know if you see what I mean. It's like some other classical instruments are maybe more connected to this kind of a little bit like, I don't know so much about this, to the normal people that maybe are not so much into the classical music world. But I think, and this is something that people say as well, that with the trumpet, it feels differently sometimes for people. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, as you say, trumpet can be seen in the jazz world and in wonderful Mexican marimbas of a specific style of playing and so on. I mean, do you draw upon those different elements? Are you intrigued by that and thinking, oh, I could pick, certain aspects of the playing?
Of course, absolutely. And I play a lot of different styles and genres in my way. I will never sound like Chet Baker. I will sound like me. But those kind of things that I'm very conscious about, and I don't want to do things that I don't feel like I'm doing well, because then other people can do it and that they do well. But yeah, I absolutely, I'm a musician. Like I said in the opening, I'm the biggest Spice Girl fan when I was young. Wannabe was released when I was 10 years old. It's like this. It was very special, and all the different things that I've been listening to. A lot of pop music, a lot of rock, darker things during the years. But I'm not. I mean, from when I was young, I wasn't kind of a classical musician. Anyway, or I didn't know that was like a specific thing. I was a bit more doing different kinds of stuff, but then I realized that my education is of course classical. But so yes, I'm very inspired. I think it's great to work with musicians from other genres. I think all in all, good music is good music, no matter.
And do you think there's a Norwegian sound in your playing? I mean, when you think of the landscape of Norway, when you think of the artists who have come from Norway, the writers, the composers, and so on, there's such a wealth of things from so many different disciplines, and I wonder if that has played a part in, or maybe you're not conscious of it, I'm not sure.
Well, a bit of both. I'm more conscious about it now than I was in the beginning, maybe. Then it was just how it is. It's how you grow up. It's like, it's what you know. But yes, I do think there is a kind of a Nordic sound, a landscape that I will always kind of be a part of, because of where I live, where I've grown up, and all the musical input and life that I live here. And so yes, maybe, but at the same time, hopefully I sound like me. So that's the most important thing at the end of the day. But there is of course something we just moved into a new apartment, and of course most of the furnitures and things that I'm attracted to and buy is Scandinavian design. And not all Norwegians are like that, not at all, but a lot of us, it feels right somehow. So yes, I mean, of course we're kind of colored from where we grow up and things that we like. Yeah, so I do like Scandinavian design very much. So yeah,
absolutely. Yes, you're not the only one. I do too, for sure.
Yeah.
But when you think about your instrument, I mean, how do you see it moving forward as an actual instrument itself, but also the physical aspects of playing and compositionally?
I do think that speaking of the music first, the music being written, there is a lot of music being written. Because like you with the percussion, the repertoire is not the same as the violinists and the pianists and all the things they have. Beethoven did not write the trumpet concerto, neither did Brahms.
I know,
So
surprisingly.
Yes, but I do think I have a theory actually about that, because I do think that in that time they wrote for musicians, like they wrote a violin concerto for this musician. So I think maybe there just wasn't a soloist around, because they have beautiful things in their orchestral music, a lot of things in the trumpets, so it's not that they didn't like it, I think, but there just wasn't, that was not a thing, being doing solo stuff, I think, on the trumpet. And also it's because of the instrument a bit as well. Like the modern instrument that we have now is very different than it was, and it sounds better than, well, who knows what they sounded like, but we have much more possibilities now.
But I mean, what about Stravinsky and Bartok? I mean,
yes, I know. I have no idea why they didn't.
I don't understand.
I know, but at the end of the day, what can I do? So it's just like, but yes, I don't know either why that didn't happen. But yeah, no, there is a lot of great music around, absolutely already, and there is being written quite a lot, which is good. I also feel, and that's one of the things that feels like amazing, that so we're not that many trumpet soloists around. So if someone writes for me, then they will write a bit differently than they might write for some of my colleagues, because of the different way that they see us as musicians, which is amazing to think about, because that means that I and my playing gets to be a part of where the repertoire is going.
Exactly.
Which is incredible.
It's extraordinary. The legacy.
Yeah, so, absolutely. So it's very important that we commission music and that we play new music, because not everything being written is going to be a masterpiece. It's just how it is. So to get those that will survive longer than us, we need a lot of music being written. So yes, I think that's happening. I do think that the instrument, if you go to the orchestral part, I think orchestral thing, if we talked about the whole boys and girls thing, it will be much more equal in, I don't know, 10 years, I think, than it is now. Maybe more, but like it will be very normal. There are so many great players coming up, and when I travel around now, most countries it's like 50-50 with girls and boys, a lot of places, which is great. So that's good for the equality of the instrument, and also, I don't know, it's just it's a great instrument to play, and it's a great instrument to get to. There's so many different things you can do.
So from a construction point of view, there are so many different types of mutes and so on. I mean, is this something that trumpet players are continually experimenting with and pushing the manufacturers to explore more, or is there a limit on that?
Well, there's probably no limits for the strange noises that you can make on the trumpet. I know that there are some that are really working on these things, especially if they specialize on contemporary music and in ensembles and work very closely with composers that have a vision of a very special sound. I like also to think, well, I do hope that the way of thinking when people play the trumpet will be even more like how they already think in a lot of other instruments like strings and stuff like that, with really just working on finding those different colors, those different
it's like the nuances of some color
everything
and
that the instrument can offer, which we still have a way to go, I think, well, it's just a mindset basically.
Interesting.
Compared to other instruments that have a greater tradition with this. But I mean, most of young players and most of the teachers talk about this, but I do think that on the general way of thinking about trumpet playing, I think, I hope that the focus will be even more in trying to be able to sound like, well, anything else than a trumpet. Of course, I play the trumpet, so I will always sound like a trumpet, but at the same time, I'm a musician first and foremost. So I do like to think that this will just get more and more important to really work on this from a young age.
Indeed, yes. And I mean, just to talk a tiny little bit about your relationship with fame and recognition, really, because back in 2011, the BBC Music Magazine named you as a superstar of tomorrow. And, are you comfortable with recognition, with, a lot of the things that go alongside being a soloist?
Well, it's part of the job. So it's like, if I didn't like being sometimes in the center of attention, then I couldn't do this. It's kind of, you have to be able to enjoy that moment. But of course, it's not very glamorous like it looks sometimes. So now I'm here, no makeup. This is me. But then, of course, when I go on stage, I dress up in great dresses, I do my makeup. I like that aspect of it too. So yeah. But I do also like them that I felt here in Norway, because here I do a lot of different things. I've also done TV presenting, being part of different things that have not that much to do with my playing, but at the same time I'm there because of what I do. So I've been part of things that some people only do to keep their celebrity status going on. But I do think that it's so nice to be able to if people recognize me on the street and they come up, then they do that because I've done something that they like, that's from this, something that I know, something that I'm good at. So it's not just for being in some reality show or something. It's actually because I do something and can do something. So it's great, that's really just nice. But yeah, it's not as glamorous as it looks. Yeah, most of the time, almost never, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, talking about doing your makeup and putting on lovely dresses and so on, I suppose that has been a relatively rare thing to happen during the past year because of the COVID situation.
Yeah, it hasn't been that often, but in Norway we've been very fortunate actually. I have played a lot in Norway for the past year. A lot last summer and autumn, and then a little bit this spring, and now a lot coming up because it's getting better here. So yes, I have been fortunate to do this still, but in a very different way than what I usually do with the traveling.
And do you think that, because we've been engaging much more with virtual performances, virtual communication and so on, has that had an impact on your appreciation of listening? Have you been listening differently because of the virtual means that we've had to engage with?
Well, I think in the beginning, I did nothing, kind of, because I didn't practice. I was like, what is this craziness going on? I came home from a tour of the States just before the lockdown. And there was like, okay, I might do a concert in 3 months' time, but probably not, because it looks like the world is really, crazy. So then I started doing everything else, basically just me and my husband at home. He didn't work either, so I didn't listen that much. Well, then I listened to everything else that had nothing to do with work, kind of. And then I don't know, I do think that this whole year or year and a half almost has really, it has taught us that you can never replace live performance. I do think that most people knew this already, but it's become very like there that you can really, people miss going to different performances. It was this kind of they asked the public here in Norway what they missed the most, and it was hugging, and it was going to concerts or performances. It's nice to be up there with hugging. So so people, it's I think the normal guy on the street, they don't have that close relationship to music and art, but they miss it. Like they can see that this is not something that they only want to see on Facebook, or a live transmission from somewhere. But it's great to see that, orchestras and ensembles and others, that the level now of the recording things are just like whoosh. Like they had to do this now, the sound and the whole productions and the pictures, the everything, the visual. It's amazing now. Like the whole industry just like
I agree.
several years of, or that's how it's, and like now when we do this Zoom thing, it somehow it also makes people very connected, without meeting up. Of course we miss meeting up, so it shouldn't be like this forever, but I do think this has helped to make the world not smaller, but maybe smaller, that it's easier. Now we just do Zoom and I can talk to you, or I can talk to someone in the States, or I don't know, wherever. I can just hello, and we can do something, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be to travel somewhere for an interview, or I hope, in the business world and the whole part of taking care of our planet and stuff, I hope that a lot of business meetings can happen on Zoom now.
Exactly.
And always traveling to Hong Kong for one meeting and back,
Absolutely. And I think really creatively, as you say, it's escalated the possibilities, the creative possibilities as well. And I think this will all be part of the norm in what we do. And it's creating this other arm that's available to us as performers, and reaching out to many different people. I'm just really, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you, because there's a lot of information there that in a way I find really inspiring, and it doesn't really matter how old you are or how long you've been in the profession. It's always inspiring talking to another musician. But Anyway,
worries. I'm just here.
is there such a thing as a practice trumpet? You know how we in percussion world have practice pads?
Yeah, no, you can use a mute, but it's horrible. So yeah, no, I just practice. The neighbors will just have to deal with it. No,
I don't think they can complain if you're playing.
Well, I mean, practicing is not, trumpet warm-ups are not, it's not the same as listening to a tune, but but so far so good. Yeah.
Have you learned something about yourself since the start of the pandemic that you perhaps hadn't realized before?
That's a very good question. I think maybe because I've had small like timeouts before, but then maybe no one else had the timeout, but now now everyone had it at the same time.
Exactly.
So I think it's really just been a reminder for all, but also for me, to just remember to focus on what I want with my life. And yes, I am a musician, of course, but it is my job. Yes, it is a lifestyle, but at the same time, it's my job. So I also want to do other things. And also the whole thing of being with friends. We've only been able to be with like some for a long time, only our closest kind of couple that we spend a lot of time with, and all those things that we've taken for granted for a long time, when you couldn't do that then. And I do appreciate when I play concerts now, I do think I appreciate it in a different way, I think, because when you don't do it that often, or when you are like, I don't think there is a possibility of being a musician will like not be a thing. I think it will always be that, there will always be musicians. So it's not like we're losing our job, but at the same time, suddenly there is something happening that people can't gather, which is what we do, which is what music does. So it's, I don't know, it's a bit of appreciate it in a different way, I think.
Yes, I totally understand that. I think getting that perspective and in a way sometimes bellows in a career isn't a bad thing, where sometimes you do need the air to flow and just have a little moment of reflection and so on. But I think the key thing is having that audience. And I'm sort of still toying with the idea that with the concerts coming up in the diary where they're not quite sure what the circumstances will be, with an audience, will it be streamed only, without an audience and so on, or 50% of an audience, what will it feel like playing to a hall that is 50% full? That is different than being full. There's all sorts of things that we still have to experience, I think.
Absolutely.
and lastly, Tine, what are your interests away from music, or what are the things that help you be the musician you are that are not completely connected with music per se?
I think it's a lot about being with our closest friends. Doing normal stuff, just hanging, playing board games, I don't know, like just doing stuff, and cooking. I love making food. Me and my husband does. And then we do other stuff. We do have a lot of Lego around in the house. Well, not now, we've just moved, so now it's in boxes and we just, we have to see, but we're very into Lego. Actually, our seating chart in our wedding was in Lego. Like we made a full model, and everyone had their
Brilliant.
tiny figure with their name. So we have Lego, and I knit a lot. I've knitted so many sweaters during this pandemic. Oh my god, it's like everyone gets a sweater around me now. So I think that's the things I do that is not necessarily connected.
So things that are using both sides of your brain in a way.
Probably, yes. And then of course we've seen so much on TV, like Netflix and HBO and Amazon Prime, and I don't know what, it's like, and sometimes being just the two of us, not having kids, having to stay inside, then it's like, should we watch another movie today? Not only the one, it's like, so yes, it's been a lot of that as well. Both interesting stuff and also just like pure entertainment, making time pass by.
I have an image right now in my mind of you knitting a kind of cozy for your mutes.
That would be something.
Like a teapot cozy, but a mute cozy. How about that?
That would be incredible. I haven't thought of that. Maybe that's something that I can, if this music career goes south, then maybe I can do this I can do things for trumpets. It could also be like a full, like, put your trumpet into this to keep it even warmer.
Exactly right. Yes, you could knit me a pair of bass drumsticks or something.
That would be something. That would be something.
Oh dear, on that knitting note, Tine, thank you so much indeed for a lovely conversation, and it's so lovely to meet you.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. So nice to meet you too. Maybe we get to meet up live someday. That would be nice.
I hope so. I hope so.
Absolutely.